Amelise, 34 years old, and 3 weeks ago, he signed away everything he had to my soon-to-be ex-husband, the 5-bedroom house, both cars, the real estate company, all of it. My lawyer begged me not to do it. My mother-in-law smirked from the gallery seats. Chloe, my husband's 27-year-old mistress, actually took a selfie right there in the courtroom. And Mark, the man he once thought he'd spend my life with, smiled like he just won the lottery. But that smile disappeared exactly 47 seconds later when his lawyer finished reading the final clause in our agreement. Before I tell you what happened, if you find this story worth hearing, please take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if you genuinely want to. And if you're watching right now, drop a comment letting me know where you're from and what time it is there. Now, let me take you back 3 years to the night he accidentally opened the wrong driveway in Mark's office. 8 years of marriage. That is how long he spent building a life with Mark Dubois. From the outside, we had everything, a sprawling villa in the suburb of Paris with 5 bedrooms we didn't need, a Porsche Cayenne in the garage for him, a 12-year-old Peugeot 308 for me, and dinner party where Mark held court while he refilled wine glass. The perfect French dream if you squinted hard enough and didn't ask too many questions. Mark controlled everything about our finance. He'll handle the money, you handle the house et told me on our honeymoon. And if young, in love, desperate to avoid the kind of fight that destroyed my parents' marriage agreed. Before Leo was born, he was a senior accountant at a mid-sized firm in La Défense. He was good at it. Number made sense to me in a way people some team didn't. But when he got pregnant, Mark sat me down with that reasonable tone and used when he already made a decision. The baby needs his mother at home. He make enough for both of us. So, he quitted. Traded spreadsheet for CP Cup, client meeting for play that. And when Leo started kindergarten and he picked up part-time remote accounting work to keep my skills sharp, Mark barely noticed. To him, he was furniture, useful, present, and utterly unremarkable. He did check his Rolex Submarine, a gift to himself for closing some deal, and announced at investor meeting that would run late. HIS home office stayed locked. The credit card statement went to his email. He had a supplementary card with a modest limit. Everything else was his domain. What he didn't know then, but would soon discover, was that his Rolex was bought on credit, and his empire was built on sand. Leo changed everything for me. My son came into the world 6 years ago with his father's dark hair and my stubborn chin. And from the moment the nurse placed him in my arms, he understood a kind of love he'd never known existed, fierce, unconditional, the kind that makes you lie awake at night wondering if you're doing enough, being enough. Mark saw Leo differently. Or son was a legacy, not a relationship. Something to mention at business dinner. My boy is already showing an interest in real estate. Can you believe it? But never something to nurture. Mark missed Leo's first step because of a conference call. Missed his first word because he was traveling. Missed every single school play, every parent-teacher conference, every bedtime story. He remembered one evening about a year ago. Leo had been waiting by the window for 2 hours, his favorite picture book clutched against his chest. Maman, when is Papa coming home? He said he'd read to me tonight. He texted Mark. No response. Cold voicemail. Leo fell asleep on the couch, still holding that book. When Mark finally woke in at 11, smelling faintly of cologne that wasn't his usual, he asked if he'd forgotten his promise. He barely looked up from his phone. I'm building a future for this family, Elise. Leo will understand when he is older. But he saw my son as fast the next morning when he realized Papa had come and gone without even saying goodnight. That was the night he realized something had been wrong for longer than he wanted to admit. Mark hadn't hugged Leo in 3 months. Hadn't asked about school, about friends, about anything. Or son wasn't a priority, he was an afterthought. The night he found out the truth, he wasn't even looking for it. 3 years ago, Leo had a school field trip coming up, and he needed his passport for some reason he can't even remember now. Mark usually kept her document in his office, but at night, and they left for one office late meeting and forgotten to lock the door. He found the passport easily enough. Top draway, right where he said it would be. But I pulled it out, my hand brushed against a folder I'd never seen before. The return address on the top envelope made me pause, BNP Paribas. Final notice, stamped in red. My accountant's brain kicked in before my wife's that could stop me. He opened it. 90 days past due. Euro 310,000 outstanding on a commercial property loan. He opened another envelope. Société Générale. Delink account. Immediate action required. Den LCL. Den a letter from a collection agency they never heard of. By the time he finished going through that draway, my hand were shaking. Not from fear, but from the sheer impossibility of what he was seeing. Marques Empire was hemorrhaging money. The properties he bragged about at party were underwater. The company that was supposed to be or retirement was drowning in debt over €1.08 million and they never said a word. He sat there in his leather chair for a long time. The papers spread around me like evidence at a crime scene. Then he did something that surprised even myself. He took out my phone, photographed every single document, timestamped, dated, crystal clear. Then he put everything back exactly how he'd found it, turned off the light, and walked out. He didn't sleep that night, but he wasn't scared anymore. He was calculating. The next morning, he made a phone call to someone he trusted more than anyone, my college roommate, Sophie Laurent. Sophie worked at a regional bank. We'd stayed close over the years, the kind of friendship that picked up right where it left off, no matter how long between conversation. She was also the only person who'd ever looked at Mark and said, "I don't know, Elise. Something about him fell off." He should have listened to her then. He was listening now. He need to run a credit check, he told her. On myself. And he need to understand what debt might be attached to my name as spouse. Sophie didn't ask why. She just said, "Come to my office tomorrow. Bring your idea." What he learned over the following weeks confirmed my worst fear and revealed something unexpected. Most of the debt was in Marques' name alone or tied to his company. But he'd taken out two loans using both our names without my knowledge of forged my signature or used an electronic version he'd never authorized. "This is fraud," Sophie said quietly, showing me the paperwork. "You could report him." "Not yet." He folded the copy she'd made and slipped them into my purse. "He need to know the full picture first." And so began my 3-year education in financial survival. He opened a savings account at a different bank, one Mark had no connection to. Every month, he funneled what he could from my part-time work. 180 years, 270 there. He documented everything, saved every email, every statement, every scrap of evidence that crossed my path. Sophie checked in periodically with update. "The debt is growing, Elise, not shrinking." He wasn't surprised, but he was ready. Mark had no idea his wife was watching and waiting. A year ago, Mark started coming home smelling like someone else. It wasn't obvious at first. A hint of perfume that wasn't mean. A text notification and des silences too quickly. Business trips that seemed to multiply overnight. But I'd spent 3 years training myself to notice everything, and Mark had grown careless with a wife and considered beneath his attention. The late night became late, the investor dinner more frequent. He upgraded his wardrobe, €2.8 Tom Ford suits charged 2 credit cards that were already maxed, while he still wore dress from 5 years ago. "You should put more effort into your appearance," he told me one evening, adjusting his new silk tie in the hallway mirror. Chloe. She's a new business associate. She always look put together. Professional women understand the importance of presentation. Chloe. The name is said too casually, too often. He didn't confront him. What would be the point? He already knew her marriage was a facade. He just needed to know how long he had before the facade crumbled completely. One night, Mark left his phone on the kitchen counter while he showered. The screen lit up. Can't wait to see you tomorrow. Where's the blue tea? He like. Xose. He didn't touch the phone. Didn't need to. The preview told me everything. That same week, he noticed him deleting his browsing history, changing password, making calls from the garage where he thought he couldn't hear. But here's what Mark never understood about me, he wasn't plotting revenge. He wasn't consumed by jealousy or heartbreak. He'd made my peace with who he was long ago. He was simply gathering information, building my case, waiting for the moment when he would finally show his hand. That moment came sooner than he expected. The first time he met Chloé Martin, she was wearing a knockoff Birkin bag and Marquez arm around her waist. It was his mother's birthday dinner, a monthly ritual at Geneviève Dubois' pristine maison de maître in Neuilly-sur-Seine, the kind of house where the silverware matched and the help knew to be invisible. He'd been attending this dinner for 8 years, always feeling like a guest who'd overstayed her welcome. That night, Mark walked in with Chloé like she belonged there. Everyone, this is Chloé. She's been consulting on some new investment opportunities for the company. She was 27, alle blonde highlights and practice smiles. Her dress was designer, or designed to look designer. He'd spent enough years auditing luxury goods to spot the tell. The stitching on her bag was uneven. The hardware slightly off color. But no one else noticed. They were too busy phoning. Mark finally found someone with ambition, Geneviève announced, squeezing Chloé's on like she was welcoming a long-lost doctor. Then she glanced at me with that thin smile he'd grown accustomed to. Elise, be a dear and help Maria bring out the appetizer. He spent that dinner in the kitchen and the margin, watching my husband paradise mistress in front of his family while they pretended not to see what was obvious. Léo sat beside me, confused. Maman, who is that lady? Why is she sitting in your chair? She's nobody important, sweetheart. Chloé looked at something Mark said, her hand lingering on his sleeve. He watched Geneviève beam with approval, and he thought, the bag isn't the only fake thing at this table. But Chloé wasn't my enemy. She was a symptom. The real threat was the man she didn't know was already bankrupt in more ways than one. 6 months before the final hearing, Mark sat me down at her dining table and delivered the news like he was announcing a quarterly earning report. He want a divorce. No preamble, no apology. Just 5 words dropped between us like a contract termination. He'd known this was coming, had prepared for it, planned for it, almost welcomed it. But hearing him say it still felt like a door slamming shut on a decade of my life. He said. What are you proposing? Mark leaned back, his expression the same one he used when negotiating with people he considered beneath him. He wants the house, the cars, the company, everything we built. He'll be keeping it. And what about me? He shrugged. You can keep Leo. I'm not interested in custody battles. The kid would slow me down. The kid. Orson. 6 years old, innocent, adoring, and his father couldn't even be bothered to use his name. You're sure? He kept my voice steady. You want everything? All the assets? All of them, every property, every account, every share? Mark smiled, clearly pleased with his own generosity. I'm being reasonable here, Elise. Most men in my position would fight you for the child, too, just to avoir support payments. I'm letting you walk away with something. Something? My son. Like Leo was a consolation prize. He looked at my husband, really looked at him, and saw exactly what he saw when he looked at me, nothing worth fighting for. All right, he said quietly. He'll need some time to review everything. Mark's eyebrow rose. They expected tears. Maybe bargaining. Not compliance. That is reasonable. He'll have my lawyer send over the paperwork. What he didn't know was that he'd been waiting for this moment for 3 years, and he was ready. The first meeting with Marques Loyer happened in a corner office in La Défense. All glass walls and leather chair designed to intimidate. Maître Antoine Lefebvre was a silver-haired partner at one of Paris' most aggressive family law firm, the kind of man who charged €550 an hour and looked at opposing party like they were problem to be eliminated. Mark had clearly chosen him for exactly that reason. He came alone. No lawyer, just me and my 5-year-old blazer, sitting across from two men who clearly thought the meeting was a formality. Madame Dubois, Maître Lefebvre began, sliding a thick folder across the table. My client HAS prepared a comprehensive proposal for the division of marital assets. Given the circumstance, we believe this is more than fair. He opened the folder. Page of legales detailing how Mark would retain sole ownership of everything, the house, vehicles, investment account, and Dubois Property LLC. In exchange, he would receive my personal belonging and custody of Leo. No alimony, no portion of the business, nothing. Mark watched me read with a satisfied smirk. She doesn't need a lawyer, he said to Maître Lefebvre, not bothering to lower his voice. She's just a part-time bookkeeper. She wouldn't understand any of this even if she tried. Maître Lefebvre looked uncomfortable. Monsieur Dubois, he really should advise that your wife retain independent counsel. Not necessary. Mark waved his hand dismissively. Elise knows he built everything. She contributed nothing. Right, Elise? He closed the folder and made his eyes. Mark blinked, clearly expecting immediate surrender. But he recovered quickly, that arrogant smile returning. Take all the time you need. The outcome won't change. He walked out of that office, and he wasn't a victim. He was a woman with a plan. Within a week, Mark had rewritten her entire marriage for public consumption. Elise is being completely unreasonable. He overheard him tell mutual friends at a neighborhood gathering he hadn't been invited to. I'm offering her a clean break and she's trying to drag this out. Probably hoping to take half my company when she never worked a day for it. The Whisper network moved fast. People he'd known for years suddenly stopped returning calls. A mom from Leo's school gave me a sympathetic look and said, he heard about everything. It must be so hard realizing you weren't compatible. Compatible. If he was the one cooked with a 27-year-old mistress. Then came Genevieve's call. Elise, her voice carried that particular frost she reserved for people who disappointed her. I understand you're making this difficult for Mark. May I remind you that my son built that company from nothing? You were lucky to live in that house, drive those cars, where the lifestyle is provided. Don't embarrass yourself by pretending you deserve more. You haven't asked for anything, Geneviève. Good. Keep it that way and don't drag this through the court. It would be humiliating for everyone, especially Leo. She hung up before he could respond. That same night, he discovered something while reviewing the property record he'd been quietly collecting. Mark had mortgaged our family home, the house we lived in, without my consent or signature. A second mortgage taken out 18 months ago. Under French law, he needed my approval for that. He didn't have it. He photographed the document, added it to my file, and felt something settle in my chest. Let them think he was weak. Let them think he was beaten. The people who underestimate you always leave the biggest blind spot. Sophie was the one who found Maître Isabelle Moreau. She's handled some of the ugliest divorce in Paris, Sophie told me over coffee at a cafe far from her usual spot. And she wins, not because she's ruthless, because she's thorough. Maître Moreau's office was nothing like Maître Lefebvre's glass tower. It occupied the second floor of a restored building in Le Marais, all warm wood and framed credential. She was in her early les années 50 with silver streaked hair and eyes that assessed me the moment he walked through her door. Sit down, Madame Dubois. Tell me everything. So he did. 3 years of documentation, the debt, the forged signature, the affair, Marques demand, the social pressure, all of it lay out on her desk in organized folded prepared myself. Maître Moreau reviewed each piece methodically, occasionally making note on a yellow legal pad. When she finished, she looked up at me with something I hadn't seen in a long time. Respect. You've done remarkable work here. Most clients come to me in crisis. You've come prepared for war. I'm not interested in war, he said. I'm interested in freedom. Then let me tell you what your options are. She set down her pen. Based on what you've shown me, you could fight for half of everything. France operate under the community property regime. You have ground. Half of 4,03 € in debt? Maître Moreau smiled. The first real smile she'd shown. You understand the situation better than your husband does. You've had 3 years to understand it. Et still thinks he is a millionaire. Then let me ask you something. She leaned forward. What do you actually want out of this divorce? He thought about Leo, about my savings account, about starting over with nothing but my son and my dignity. You want him to get exactly what he is asking for. Maître Moreau studied me for a long moment, then pulled a thick legal textbook from her shelf. Under French law, when marital assets are divided in a divorce, the debt attached to those assets can be assigned a will. It's called a liability assumption clause. She opened to a marked page. If one party agrees to take ownership of an asset, they can also be required to assume full responsibility for any lien, mortgage, or debt associated with it. So, if Mark wants everything, then Mark J everything, he said. Including the 4,03 € in liability currently attached to those assets. Maître Moreau spent traced a line in her note. The key censuring the agreement is explicit and legally binding and debt is signed voluntarily with full knowledge of what he is agreeing to. He won't read it carefully, he said. He never does. He already thinks he is one. That is his choice. Maître Moreau closed the book. But we need to protect you legally. There's a document called a waiver of independent review. Essentially, ELL be acknowledging that he had the opportunity to have everything examined by financial expert and chose not to. HIS lawyer will tell him to get an independent audit. Almost certainly. But will Mark listen? He thought about my husband, his ego, his certainty, his absolute conviction that he was the smartest person in any room. No, he won't. Then here's what we do. Maître Moreau pulled out a fresh legal pad. We draft an agreement that give him exactly what he has demanded. The house, the cars, the company, all of it. We include the liability assumption clause on page 47 of a 52 page document. And we wait for him to sign away his own future. And if he read it, then you're no worse off than you were before. She met my eyes. Netter did he. The pressure came from multiple directions at once. Chloe calm first. Actually called, not texted, her voice dripping with false sweetness. Elise, he know this is awkward, but he just wanted to reach out, woman to woman. She paused for effect. Mark and he are looking at some properties together, and the financing is getting complicated because of the divorce timeline. If you could just speed things along, it would make everything so much easier. Speed things along, he repeated. You know how it is. We want to start our new chapter, and you're probably ready to move on, too, right? It's better for everyone if we can just wrap this up quickly. He let the silence stretch just long enough to make her uncomfortable. I'll take that under consideration, Chloe. Then Mark weighed in via email, always documenting himself, never aware of how those words might look later. Elise, my patience is running thin. If you don't sign within 2 weeks, I'll file a motion claiming deliberate delay. Antoine says he have ground. Don't make this ugly. The threats continued. HIS lawyer sans formal letters. HIS mother left voicemail. Even acquaintance started reaching out with helpful advice about accepting reality. But Burier in Chloe's phone call was something she probably shouldn't have mentioned, the financing is getting complicated. Which meant Mark needed assets on paper to secure new loans. He was planning to leverage the very properties that were already drowning in debt, probably to fund his new life with Chloe. He wasn't just greedy. He was desperate. He showed the email to Maître Moreau. He is signing away with this kind of documented pressure. She almost looked. Elise, your husband is building your case for us. He just smiled. Let him keep pushing. Every threat was another nail in his own coffin. The family meeting was Genevieve's idea. Naturally. We should settle this like civilized people, she announced, summoning us all to her Neuilly-sur-Seine dining room, the one with the baccarat crystal chandelier and the mahogany table that had witnessed 30 years of Dubois family power play. Mark sat at the head of the table, Geneviève to his right, a few cousins and uncles scattered along the side like a jury. He was placed at the far end, physically marginalized, exactly where they wanted me. Elise H.S. agreed to accept Mark's term, Geneviève began, not bothering to let me speak for myself. She'll sign the papers this week, and we can all move forward from this unfortunate situation. Mark smiled magnanimously. He always knew she'd come around. Elise understand she wasn't really equipped for this kind of negotiation. The cousin nodded. The uncle cleared his throat approvingly. He sat with my unfolded, saying nothing. We should acknowledge that Mark is being extremely generous, Geneviève continued. Es letting Elise keep Leo, even tug. She waved her hand vaguely. A boy need his father. Traditionally speaking. Leo is my priority, he said quietly. He just want what is best for him. Then sign the papers, Mark said. Stop dragging this out. He looked down at my aunt, performing the defeated wife they expected to see. You're right. He'll sign. He only wanted to make sure he understood everything. Geneviève beamed. Finally, some sense. You see, Mark? He told you she'd come around once she realized she had no other choice. Across the room, he caught Leo watching from the doorway where the nanny was supposed to keep him occupied. His small face was confused, worried. He smiled at him gently. What nobody in that room understood was that he hadn't surrendered. He just made them think he had. The night before the final hearing, he sat alone in the tiny apartment he'd rented after moving out of the house. 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a galley kitchen barely big enough for 2 people to stand side by side. But it was clean, it was safe, and it was worse. Mine and Leo's. My son had fallen asleep an hour earlier, his favorite stuffed elephant tucked under his arm. He watched him breathe for a few minutes, this small person who had become the center of my entire universe. Then he walked to the kitchen table where my documents were spread out. 3 years of preparation, all of it leading to tomorrow. He reviewed the final agreement one more time. 52 pages. The liability assumption clause buried on page 47. Exactly a Maître Moreau and he had planned. The waiver of independent financial review on page 49. Everything legal, everything transparent for anyone who wanted to look. Mark wouldn't look. He was certain of it. But certainty and reality are different things, and my aunt trembled slightly as he closed the folder. On the counter, he'd set out my outfit for tomorrow. A simple grey blazer, white blouse, minimal jewelry. The only piece that mattered was the ring my grandmother had left me, at a gold band with a tiny sapphire worth nothing monetarily but everything emotionally. It was the one asset Mark had never thought to claim. Leo stirred in his sleep, mumbling something about crepe. He walked back to his room and sat on the edge of his bed, brushing hair from his forehead. Whatever happens tomorrow, he whispered, we're going to be okay. The words were meant for him, but maybe needed to hear them, too. He didn't sleep much that night, but he wasn't afraid anymore. He want to pause here for a moment if you don't mind. Before he tell you what happened in that courtroom, he need to say something to anyone listening who might recognize piece of their own story in mine. If you're in a relationship where you feel controlled, where someone else manage every dollar, makes every decision, treats you like you're invisible or incapable, he want you to know that you're not alone. And you're not crazy for feeling trapped. For 3 years, he stayed silent. Not because he accepted what was happening, but because he was building something in that silence. A plan, a safety net, a way out that no one could take from me. I'm not telling you my path is the right one for everyone. Every situation is different. But if there's one thing I've learned, it's this: silence isn't always weakness. Sometimes it's strategy. And knowing your own worth doesn't require anyone else to see it. If this story means something to you, share it with someone who might need to hear it. A friend, a sister, a coworker who is going through something similar. Sometimes the most powerful thing we can do is remind each other that there are options even when it feels like there aren't. Hit that like button if you want to help more people find this video. And if you're still here, still listening, come on and tell me, have you ever been underestimated? How did you prove them wrong? I'll be reading every single response. Now, back to the morning of the hearing. He dropped Leo off at Sophie's house, kissed him goodbye, and drove to the courthouse in my old Peugeot 308. The Porsche was already in the parking lot when he arrived. Mark had gotten there early, eager to claim his prize. He had no idea what was waiting for him. The morning of January 3rd was unseasonably warm for Paris. 15 degrees Celsius, bright sun cutting through wispy clouds. He stood outside the family courthouse, watching my breath not fog in the air, feeling strangely calm. 3 years of waiting, and it had come down to this. One hearing, one signature, one moment that would determine the rest of my life. My phone buzzed. Maître Moreau, in the building, room 4B, ready when you are. He texted back a simple coming and walked through the glass doors. Inside, the courthouse hummed with the mundane business of ending, couple signing custody agreement, lawyers shuffling papers, clerks stamping documents that would reshape family forever. Just another Tuesday for everyone except the people whose worlds were changing. He found room 4B at the end of a long hallway. Through the narrow window in the door, he could see Mark already seated at the respondent's table, Maître Lefebvre buzzed him. Both men reviewing papers with the relaxed posture of people who believed they'd already won. Maître Moreau was waiting for me outside. How are you feeling? Ready? The word came out steady. Is everything in order? Every document filled, every clause triple checked. She touched my arm briefly, unusual for her, but somehow exactly what he needed. I'm not trying to prove anything. He made her eyes. I'm just trying to be free. She nodded once, then opened the door. Mark looked up eye en terre. He smiled, that confident, condescending smile he'd seen a thousand times. Elise, glad you could make it. He took my seat, buzzed Maître Moreau without responding. Let him smile. It wouldn't last long. The courtroom was smaller than he'd imagined, more intimate. Wood-paneled walls, fluorescent lighting that hummed finely overhead, row of gallery seating that were mostly empty. Mostly. Chloe had claimed a spot in the front row, wearing a red designer dress that probably cost more than my first car. She was texting when he walked in, but looked up long enough to give me a smile that was almost pitying. Beside her sat Geneviève Dubois, immaculate in Chanel, her posture radiating the quiet certainty of a woman who had never been denied anything in her life. They'd come to witness Mark's triumph, a front row seat to my humiliation. He settled into my chair and watched my husband from across the aisle. He'd worn his best navy suit, a gold tie clip catching the light. The Rolex gleamed on his wrist. To anyone who didn't know better, he looked like a man in complete control. Maître Lefebvre leaned over to whisper something, and he cocked fragment, routine. Just need her signature. Home by lunch. Mark nodded, barely listening. That was when he noticed something interesting. Maître Lefebvre's face. There was tension around his eyes, a tightness in his jaw that didn't match his confident word. He kept glancing at the thick document folder between them, then at Mark, who hadn't touched it. Juge Béatrice Durand, presiding, the clerk announced. A woman in her les années 60 entered from chambers, Grey hairpin back severely, reading glass perché on her nose. We here for the mate of Dubois versus Dubois, final dissolution hearing. She looked up. Counselor, are both parties prepared to proceed? We are, Your Honor, Maître Lefebvre said. We are, Maître Moreau confirmed. Juge Durand nodded. Then let's begin. I understand we have a settlement agreement to review. Mark straightened in his seat, practically glowing with anticipation. Showtime. The agreement was read into the record with the same clinical detachment a medical diagnosis. Madame Dubois agreed to relinquish all claim to the marital residence located at Chemin du Vallon, Versailles. The clerk read, as well all motor vehicles registered to the marriage, including one 2023 Porsche Cayenne and one 2012 Peugeot 308. The list went on, properties. Investment account, Dubois Property LLC, and all ETS Holdings. Every asset mark had demanded formally transferred to his sole ownership. Chloé squeezed Geneviève's arm, beaming. Juge Durand looked over her glass at me. Madame Dubois, you understand that by signing this agreement, you are relinquishing your community property rights to these assets? I understand, Your Honor. And you've had adequate time to review this agreement with your counsel? I have. Any question before we proceed with signature? No, Your Honor. Maître Lefebvre cleared his throat. Your Honor, I'd like it noted that my client was advised to obtain independent financial review of the marital assets and debt, BHAS elected to have that review. Monsieur Dubois, Juge Durand turned to Mark. Is that accurate? You're waiving your right to have the financial independently verified before signing. Mark didn't hesitate. He built this company, Your Honor. He know exactly what it's worth. He don't need some accountant telling me what he already know. Then please sign the waiver on page 49. Mark took Maître Lefebvre's pen, a hand blank naturally, and signed with a flourish. He watched Maître Lefebvre's face as Mark handed back the pen. The attorney was flipping through page rapidly now, searching for something. His eyes stopped on page 47. The color drained from his face. Mark, he whispered urgently, reaching for his client's arm. Ouais. But Mark was already turning to page 52, signing his name on the final line. Don, my husband announced. The moment Mark's pen lifted from the paper, Maître Lefebvre's face went white. He watched it happen in real time, the realization spreading across his feature like ice forming on a windshield. His mouth opened slightly, his hand gripped the edge of the table. Mark? His voice was barely above a whisper. What? My husband looked, sliding the signed document towards the clerk. It's done. She signed. He signed. Let's wrap this up. You don't understand. Maître Lefebvre was scrambling through the page now, his professional composure crumbling. Page 47. The liability assumption clause. The what? Juge Durand held up her hand. Maître Lefebvre, is there an issue? Maître Lefebvre looked from Mark to the judge to me, and he could see the exact moment he understood he couldn't undo what had just happened. Your Honor, my client may not have fully understood. Your client, Maître Moreau interrupted smoothly, was asked directly if he wanted independent financial review. He declined. He signed the waiver voluntarily. The agreement is executed. What is everyone talking about? Mark's voice had lost its confidence. What is on page 47? Maître Lefebvre handed him the document, his finger pointing to the relevant clause. He watched my husband's eyes move across the text. The party receiving marital assets hereby assume full personal liability for all debt, lien, mortgage, and financial encumbrance attached to said assets, releasing the other party from any and all obligation related thereto. Mark's face went grey. This says. He looked up at Maître Lefebvre, then at me. This says I'm responsible for the debt. All 4,03 € millions, Maître Moreau confirmed. A of your signature 30 seconds ago. 4 millions? What? Chloé's voice cut through from the gallery. He sat perfectly still, watching my husband finally understand what he just done to himself. Mark shot to his feet so fast his chair screeched against the floor. This is fraud, his voice echoed through the small courtroom. She tricked me. This whole thing is. She can't do this. Monsieur Dubois, sit down. Juge Durand-Eston left no room for negotiation. I'm not sitting down until Someone explain how this is legal. Antoine, do something. Maître Lefebvre stood frozen, his face the color of all paper. You signed the waiver, Mark. You specifically stated you knew what the assets were worth. You refused independent review because. He thought. Mark spun toward me. You knew. You knew the whole time. You planned this. He didn't plan anything. My voice came out steady, calm. He just gave you exactly what you asked for. Your Honor, Mark slammed his palm on the table. He demanded agrément bivouaded. He was deceived. You were not deceived, Monsieur Dubois. Juge Durand removed her reading glass, fixing him with a stare that silenced the room. The financial records of your company are public. The debt attached to your properties are matters of record. Your wife's attorney included full disclosure documentation in the agreement packet. You chose not to read it. He didn't know. You signed a waiver stating you didn't need to know. The judge's voice hardened. This court cannot protect party from their own arrogance. From the gallery, he heard Chloe's voice, I ain't panicked. Mark, what does this mean? You said you were a millionaire. Geneviève was already standing, gathering her purse, her face rigid with fury and embarrassment. Maman. Mark reached toward her. Don't. The single word cut like a knife. She walked out without looking back. Mark stood in the wreckage of his victory, finally understanding that he hadn't won anything. He'd just inherited his own destruction. In the silence that followed Genevieve's exit, he stood. Mark turned to me, his face contorted with rage and desperation et emotion he'd never seen him show so openly. For 8 years, he'd been the one in control. Now he was watching that control dissolve like sugar in water. You destroyed me, he whispered. You destroyed everything. He walked to the center of the courtroom, close enough that he could hear me clearly, but far enough to maintain the distance he'd been building for 3 years. No, Mark. You destroyed yourself. He just stopped cleaning up after you. Elise. For 8 years, you told me he had no value. That he didn't understand business or money or anything important. He kept my voice level, the way he'd practiced in front of my bathroom mirror on night when he couldn't sleep. You said he was just a part-time bookkeeper. You said Leo was a burden. You said he should be grateful you let me stay. His mouth opened, but no word came. I'm not grateful. He touched my grandmother's ring, drawing strength from the small, familiar weight. I'm free. And for the first time in 8 years, he can finally breathe. He turned to Maître Moreau, who was already packing her briefcase with key efficiency. Then he looked back at Mark one final time. He don't hate you. I'm not even angry anymore. He just refused to let you define who I am for one more second. Elise, ouais. We can fix this. We can. No. The word was final, complete. There's nothing left to fix. He walked out of the courtroom, my footsteps steady on the tile floor. Behind me, he heard Mark calling my name, heard Maître Lefebvre trying to calm him down, heard Chloe demanding explanation, but he didn't look back. He was already gone. He was halfway down the courthouse hallway when the shooting started. Through the glass doors of room 4B, he could see Chloe standing in Mark's path, her face flushed, her carefully applied makeup starting to run. 4,03 € millions. Her voice carried clearly into the corridor. You told me the company was worth the times that. You said we were going to buy a house in Avenue Montaigne, travel to Europe, start a family. Chloe, listen. Mark reached for her arm. She yanked away. Don't touch me. God, I can't believe I fell for this. My father was right about you. Your father cut you off because he chose you over him. She looked, but it was a bitter, broken sound. And now I find out you're not even a real millionaire. You're worse than broke. You're negative broke. Maître Moreau appeared beside me, watching the scene unfold with professional detachment. I've seen a lot of divorce, Elise. This might be the most complete implosion I've witnessed in real time. I didn't plan for this part. I meant it. Watching Marquez mistress abandon him felt less satisfying than I'd expected. Just exhausting, like watching the final act of a play that had gone on too long. Through the glass, Chloe was already walking away, elle clicking furiously against the marble floor. She pulled out her phone as she passed us, not even glancing in my direction. Papa, it's me. I made a huge mistake. Can I come home? Mark appeared in the doorway, looking like a man who'd just watched his anti-world collapse, which he supposed he had. Our eyes met across the hallway. He felt nothing but relief. Goodbye, Mark, he said quietly. Then he walked toward the exit, toward my son, toward whatever came next. Freedom had never felt so simple. 3 months after the hearing, Marquez' empire finished crumbling. He heard about it through Sophie, who still had connection at various banks in the city. The details arrived in fragments over coffee, like dispatch from a distant war. The house sold first, €530,000, which wasn't enough to cover the mortgage and second lien. Mark walked away still owing €290,000 on a property and they lost. The Porsche was repossessed by the financing company 2 weeks later. The repo man came at 3 in the morning, according to a neighbor who witnessed it. Mark apparently stood in his driveway in his bathrobe screaming about lawsuit and wrongful seizure until someone threatened to call the police. Dubois Property LLC filed for judicial liquidation in March. The commercial properties Mark had been so proud of went to auction, where they sold for a fraction of their original purchase price. The remaining debt, nearly €2.07 million, stayed with him. He had to move out of the house before the sale closed. Sophie told me he found a studio apartment in a complex in Sarcelles. No dormant, no pool, no anything, really. He nodded, processing the information without satisfaction. And his job? Some small brokerage firm hired him. Commission only. Sophie shook her head. From CEO to entry-level sale in 90 days. That is good to be some kind of record. He thought about the man he'd married. His confidence, his ambition, his absolute certainty that he was destined for greatness. He thought about all the times they told me he didn't understand business, didn't understand money, didn't understand anything. He did this to himself, he said finally. He just stopped protecting him from the consequence. Sophie squeezed my hand across the table. You know what? That is the best kind of revenge. The kind you don't even have to take. Summer arrived and with it a new beginning. Our apartment had transformed over the month from a temporary refuge into something that felt like home. Leo's drawing covered the refrigerator. Plank crowded the windowsill and Herbie started growing to save money on grocery and kept because they made me happy. The living room had a second couch that was more comfortable than any piece of furniture in Marquez' showcase house. He returned to accounting full-time in April, a mid-level position at a firm that valued competence over pedigree. By June, he'd been promoted to senior accountant. My boss said he had exceptional attention to detail. He didn't tell her he'd developed that skill tracking a fraudulous bank for 3 years. Leo was thriving, too. He'd made friends at his new school, joined a soccer team, started reading chapter books before bed. He rarely asked about his father anymore, not because he discouraged it, but because the question had simply stopped mattering to him. Maman, watch me, he shouted from across the park, attempting a cartwheel that ended in a pile of jiggles. He applauded from my bench, feeling something he hadn't experienced in years, uncomplicated happiness. My phone buzzed. A notification from the CNAM, Conservatoire national des arts et métiers. Id been accepted into their evening accounting certification program. Class started in September. What are you smiling about? Leo asked, running over to flop down buzzed me. Good news, buddy. Maman is going back to school. Like me? Exactly like you. I thought about this for a moment. Can we celebrate with ice cream? Absolutely. We walked to the shop on the corner on Dinand, and I realized something that surprised me. This small life, this modest apartment, this ordinary job, this simple joy was everything I'd never known I wanted. And it was entirely my own. I want to take another moment if that is okay. We're almost at the end of this story, but before we get there, I have a question for you. Have you ever made a decision that everyone around you thought was insane? Have you ever trusted yourself when no one else did? Because that is really what this story is about. Not revenge, not karma, not watching someone get what they deserve. It's about the key voice inside you that knows the truth, even when the noise of everyone else's opinion try to drown it out. For 3 years, I listened to that voice. I planned. I prepared. I kept my mouth shut when everyone expected me to argue beg or fall apart. And when the moment came, I was ready. I'm not telling you this to brag. I'm telling you because I know there's someone watching right now who need to hear it. Your silence isn't weakness. Your patience isn't passivity. And the people who underestimate you, they're giving you the greatest gift possible, time to prepare while they're too busy feeling superior to notice. So, here's my challenge to you, if you know someone who is in the middle of their own silent battle, a friend, a family member, anyone who might need to hear that their planning will pay off, share this video with them. And if this story has meant something to you, take a second to like, subscribe, and turn on notification. It helps these stories reach more people who might need them. Now, let me tell you what happened when Mark finally reached out to me a year after everything fell apart. Because that is when I learned something unexpected about him, about myself, and about what forgiveness actually means. We're almost at the end. Stay with me. The text came on a Tuesday evening, almost exactly 1 year after the final hearing. I need to talk to you. It's about Leo. I stared at my phone for a long moment, thumb hovering over the delete button. Then curiosity, or maybe something softer, made me tip back, public place. Tomorrow, noon, the café on rue de Rivoli. I agreed. I almost didn't recognize Mark when I walked in. The tailor suits were gone, replaced by khaki and a polo shirt that hung looser than it should have. And they lost weight, not in a healthy way. His face looked tired. The confidence drained from his feature. He sat down across from me without ordering anything. You look good, he said. You look happy. I am. Silence stretched between us. He stared at his hand. I'm not here to apologize, he finally said. I know you wouldn't believe me if he did. I'm here because. He took a breath. I've been in therapy for 6 months. And my therapist says I need to take accountability for what he did to you. To Leo. He waited. He was a terrible husband and a worse father. The word came out like they physically hurt him. He treated you like you didn't matter. He treated Orson like an afterthought. He was so obsessed with my own image that he couldn't see what he was destroying. Why are you telling me this? Because you want to see Leo. He made my eyes for the first time. Not to get back at you or prove anything. He just. He want to try to be his father. A real father. If you let me. He studied the man he once loved, searching for the arrogance he learned to navigate. He didn't find it. He'll consider it, he said. On condition. That night, after Leo was asleep, he sat on my balcony with a cup of tea and watched the city lights flicker in the distance. He thought about the woman he'd been 3 years ago, scared, incertain, convinced that silence was her only option. He thought about the woman he was now, still yeah, but no longer afraid. Still careful, but no longer trapped. Mark wanted back into Leo's life. 6 months ago, he would have said no without hesitation. But something in his eyes today had been different. Something broken that was trying to rebuild itself. He couldn't heal him. That wasn't my job anymore. But Leo deserved to know his father, or at least the father Mark was trying to become. So he set my condition, monthly therapy session verified by his counselor. Steady employment for 6 months minimum. Supervised visit first, progressing only if Leo felt comfortable. And one absolute rule, he would never, ever speak about me negatively in front of her son. Mark agreed to everything. He didn't know if he'd follow through. People promise change all the time and believe nothing. But he'd learned something important over the past 3 years. Boundaries aren't about controlling other people's behavior. They're about protecting your own peace. He pulled out my journal, something my own therapist had suggested he start, and wrote a few lines. Boundaries aren't walls, they're doors. You chose who walks through them. He chose to give Mark a door. Whether he walks through it a better man is up to him. Either way, Leo and he will be okay. The tea had gone cold, but he didn't mind. He sat there a while longer, watching stars emerge through Paris' light pollution, and let myself feel something he'd almost forgotten was possible. Hope. September arrived with the smell of fresh notebooks and new beginning. Leo started first grade the same week he started my accounting certification class. We developed a routine, homework together at the kitchen table, him practicing his letters while he studied tax law. Some team we'd quiz each other. He usually won. What is 4 plus 6? He'd ask. So what is the difference between assets and liability? He'd log. Where did you learn that word? From you. You say it in your sleep some team. Work was going well. My boss had mentioned the possibility of partnership track. If he continued performing at my current level and finished my certification, for the first time in my adult life, he was building something that belonged entirely to me. Sophie came by one evening with a bottle of wine. The good kind, not the Salrac kind we used to split in college. I have news, she announced, settling onto my second en couche. Your ex-husband paid off one of his smaller debt last month. First voluntary payment is made since the bankruptcy. He took a sip of my wine. That is good for him. Aren't you curious about the details? Not particularly. Sophie studied me for a moment, then smiled. You really are over it, aren't you? He was over it the day he walked out of that courtroom. He looked around my modest apartment, the plan, the drawing, the evidence of a life built from scratch. The next morning, Leo and he walked to school together, his hand warm in mine. Maman he asked how we reached the gates. Are you happy? He knelt down to his level, adjusting his backpack strap. Yes, baby, I really am. He smiled, that beautiful, uncomplicated smile that made everything worthwhile, and ran toward his classroom. He stood watching until he disappeared inside. Then he walked toward my future. Before he ended this story, he wanted to share something my therapist helped me understand about Mark, about myself, and about maybe someone you know. Mark wasn't born cruel. He was raised to believe that being a man meant being in control of money, of decision, of everything and everyone around him. His father was the same way, and his father before that. When his business started failing, he couldn't admit it. Not to me, not to his family, not even to himself. Because in his mind, admitting failure meant admitting he wasn't a real man. So, he doubled down, took on more debt, projected more confidence, and when the pressure became unbearable, he found someone new, someone who didn't know the truth, who could reflect back the successful image he so desperately needed to see. Understanding this doesn't excuse what he did. It just explain it. And honestly, it helped me stop taking it personally. His cruelty was never really about me. It was about his own fear of being seen as weak. For me, he had my own pattern to confront. He avoided conflict because he watched my parents' marriage implode in screaming match and slam doors. He thought silence meant peace. He didn't realize he was confusing peace with paralysis. What he learned through all of this is that silence can be powerful, but only when it's a choice, not a cage. Planning is valuable, but so is knowing when to act. And your worth doesn't depend on whether the people around you recognize it. If there's a lesson here, it's this: the people who underestimate you are building their own trap. You don't have to do anything but stay ready. So that is my story. A woman who was told she didn't matter. Who spent 3 years proving that she did not to anyone else, but to herself. If this meant something to you, hit that like button. Subscribe if you want to hear more stories like this one, and check out the description for related video, more stories about people who were counted out and ended up on top. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being here until the end. I'm Elise, and hope wherever you are, whatever you're facing, you know that you're stronger than they think. You just might not have found your moment yet, but you will.